Hey, this is Max Alper, aka Parrotsky, and you are listening to Group Critique Fight Club. Theater of Eternal Music, Lamont Young, Tony Conrad, Marianne Zazila, others who I can't name at this very moment, John Cale, sometimes, fun times all around. We're back post-Turkey Day. We are here. We're feeling fat. I am feeling full. Ate too much turkey. Ate too many edibles. Feeling groggy on that THC and that tryptophan. I'm gonna get banned from YouTube. This is the shit they don't want you to hear, folks. But I tell it like it is. That's why you keep coming to me, all 5 of you. Hope everyone had a good holiday. If you celebrate. If you don't celebrate, well, learn to celebrate. Stuffing is good. It's actually not about the food. It's about who you spend it with. And I hope if you have friends, family, whether you're doing it for Thanksgiving or otherwise, that you say hi to people, that you talk to one another, that you love each other. Just like I love you. What do we got housekeeping wise? Anything happening? Oh yeah. So next week, monthly project for November, December, right? No, in 2 weeks from now. My bad. Not in next week, in 2 weeks. But in case you didn't know, we got ourselves the November through December monthly project up with our boy Joshua Eustace, aka Telephone Tel Aviv, a wonderful composer, technologist, orchestrator, currently doing numbers on the is it Josh Softy's whatever the new Timothée Chalamet movie that's going viral for its ad campaign. I forget what it's called, but Joshua Eustace orchestrated the strings for old One O Tricks Point Never, Daniel Lopatin, for that score. So he's going to be hanging with us on the 15th as our guest facilitator. The project, once again, just reading it out for all the homies in case you haven't been hip to it yet. Here is the prompt for you. In recent months during Group Critique Fight Club, a question has continued to arise concerning our work-in-progress recordings. In what video game map does your piece take place? Is it on what video game map? In what video game map does your piece take place? It's a great question as it pertains to both a speculative spatiality as far as where our music would best fit, but also under what hypothetical context would it best fit as well. For this monthly project, we're going to take this question a step further. So you are to musically speculate on a chosen narrative theme for a fictional scene that includes a who, what, where, when, and why. This speculative scene should not come from any pre-existing visual media, though pre-existing fictional text passages are allowed. The scene description should be provided by you in text format along with the recording itself. So in that text, please include your who, what, when, where, and why. There are no genre-specific guidelines for this project. As we know, film score does not pertain to a specific genre. But if you feel the need to include any diegetic location recordings or Foley or sound effects as a means of elevating your score, then you are welcome to provide them as part of the final recording. Obviously, I mean within the recording itself. These recordings should be 5 minutes in duration. The accompanying text should include any of the story beats, as we say in film terms, if and when an action causes a reaction in the narrative, so that we can mentally contextualize the musical arc to the score, i.e., Odysseus pauses to hear the song of the sirens and turns towards the rocky shores. Those are some story beats for you right there, or at least an example of one. So that's your monthly project. Will be due in 2 weeks, and we got Joshua Eustace live on the stream, listening in, talking to us, giving feedback, talking about his work in the industry. What else? We got a field recording field trip coming up this coming Saturday for anybody in the New York City tri-state area, as well as fully remotely. Still time to join, still time to register for that. Link is on the Patreon and in the fucking Discord and all sorts of places you could find it. Hit me up if you want a link to register. The first part already happened, but it was fully a remote lecture that was recorded. So you will have access to that if you feel like it. So, blah, 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 blah. That's happening this weekend as well, the in-person portion of that. But you can do it fully remote. Some of y'all who are registered are going to be doing it wherever you are in the world, and that's totally fine as well. Okay. Whew. I think that's it for announcements, housekeepings, things of that nature. We could get to your music. Looks like we got one more track here submitted a little late. And so I am going to download this and put it into our wonderful playlist here. Yes, once again, forgot to mention our show here, our live stream, once again presented to us and supported by our good friends at Tape Trade. Get in on that digital dubstep. Get in on that digital dubplate mindset, y'all. Start making private playlists of your tracks. Send them to your friends. Create a playlist in which y'all can share and, send tracks to each other. We don't need to be immediately thinking about posting it to public channels. We definitely don't need to be thinking about posting singles for playlistability on streaming platforms. I would much rather see y'all be using something like this. And let's relive that joy of file sharing once again. And obviously utilizing a tool that doesn't scrape your data. Tapetrade.io, our homies. Many thanks to them for supporting the stream. We'll be posting in the show description that promo code link for those that are still on the fence and want to give it a shot. Get yourself a free trial. Okie dokie. Going into our Discord for the evening. We got ourselves some friends. I already tried digital dubstep. It was a mixed bag. Yeah, we keep my shits analog. All right. We got ourselves a new track from Miss B. They write to us here. Here is my most recent track. This was part of my first live set for this project. And it felt really great to... Wait, hold on. I got to move my window here. I got cut off. Felt really great to play, so I thought I would try hitting a studio version of it. Open to all thoughts and critiques about structure, mixing, tonality. This is a pretty early mix of the track. All right, we're getting something fresh off the presses. Let me just open up the screen. Okie dokie. Fainting Spells Mix 2. That's the track, right? Fainting Spells. I believe that's the one. Hold up. Making sure I'm getting my shit in the correct order. Beep. Yes, it is. Okay. All right. Fainting Spells Mix 2. Let's go. right. Give it up for Miss B. Bohannon. With the track Fainting Spells. Version 2 of new versions to come, I would assume. So look, I mean, we could talk about... We're already talking about mix in the chat, which is great. And I think that, like, regardless of the compositional form, I agree with Karim that there is a need for bass to be nearly emphasized as the lead instrument, if not the lead instrument here, and not just for the acid squelching and the shifting in timbre, which is great, but like it needs to hold us down tonally prominently, because like both in the dissonance and in the tonal there is a busyness happening in the mid section, not both just like mid range of the mix, but also sort of like mid registers, octaves of instruments here. And so we need to like create more distinctive categories of registers here. And the bass itself, I think, could be like octaved down, like doubled downwards, like use an octave effect or something to create like, because it's heavily bright. It's very bright. It's very much in like the bass region and excluding the sub bass region. And I think that we can have some sub bass region in there as well. And maybe it might not need to be doubled. Maybe even like having an auxiliary bass that is more of a sine wavy, warmer, but like, you cannot, argue the tonality of it. Like, something that's really hugging the chords here, because the chords are important. Now, besides that, like mix wise, like I think all of this can be dirtied up. I think it sounds too clean. I don't think it's really mixed right now. I think that like this type of near dark, near Italo disco, but in the most like sort of giallo mystique kind of way to it. I want to imagine this on a VHS. I want to imagine this on like no ifs, ands, or buts. Like this is like analog instrumentation involved here, and obviously it's all recorded very digitally. So like easy way to do that is just to like saturate, use tape emulator, use ways to just dirty this up. You hear me say that a lot. Good dirt is good. Good dirt is good. My only thought compositionally here, and I think we should go back and just like briefly analyze. It's really two sections. There's dissonance and consonance here. The first part, and we'll listen to it through here. This is our semi-dissonant, semi-serialist, almost Stravinsky-esque tone rose that we're hearing. This is where I'm talking about the busyness, because if we're orchestrating this, we have to think about like where the majority of our, musical activity is taking place, and it's basically all in the mid-range instruments right now, into mid-highs. And I think that we could utilize mix to our advantage by creating more width, and what we're hearing things exclusively over here and other things exclusively over here. That way it doesn't get too busy in the middle, because right now there's just a lot happening in the center of the stereo image as well. But more so, let's just like view this from durations here. Like, well, first, how long until we hear the tonal drop? About 1 minute 30, 1 minute 45. Does it return back? Sounds like we're really starting to dedicate ourselves to the tonality at this point, right? I know, but it returns there. It returns back to the dissonance here. Where's the drop? Where's the change? Trying to find that one moment. Ah, yes. Here. Okay. So, duration-wise, we are at we're at 3 minutes and 30 seconds before we get our B section, right? And yes, 3 minutes and 30 right there. I think we can repeat. It sounds like the A section is going through 2 long cycles, 2 long repetitions here, both about a minute 45-ish or so. I think we could do just one. I think it takes too long as far as form, like macro view form, duration of the composition, for it to the dissonance is leading up. It is building suspense. It's building anticipation that then gets resolved with this this tonal center that comes right at the drop of 3:30. And I think you're stringing us along a bit too much in that anticipation leading up to. I think that we should utilize a more symmetrical view of this piece, where rather than it being 6 minutes, it was 5 minutes, and we have about 2.5-ish minutes of dissonance into 2.5 minutes of consonance. I'm just trying to view this compositionally as like form, emphasis on form. I'm getting my Morton Feldman on here. I'm not a fan of the asymmetry. If there was to be asymmetry, I would rather it be leaning on the resolution towards tonality rather than emphasizing the dissonance section. It starts to lose its function as an anticipatory sort of passage if we're repeating it. Like it's building up towards something. I would rather have the second time through where you start to build some risers and other sound effects elements or sound design elements that really are meant to be creating this suspense that ultimately gets resolved in a dark, big minor chord ending. You know what I mean? Okay, so you're saying, yeah, I think the dissonance section is what feels like the stronger section to me. Interesting. I'm not weighing one versus the other as far as stronger, but to me, there's also kind of like 2 pieces here where we could go ham on just the dissonance and create a piece that is solely that, in which we are really like attention to detail as far as the stereo image goes and creating counterpoint from left to right that feels far more in line with like almost a serialist sort of approach to electro, personally, I think we should be keeping it all mended as one, but think of like cause and effect. Like we are dealing with the dissonance and wading through it in order for it to resolve into consonance. But from a form perspective of duration, I think that there should be equal emphasis. Just from my listening to this, it felt like we were going on a bit long with the dissonance, and it because it just, I think we just repeated it, I would see how you feel in the condensing the arrangement, sort of I guess feedback that I'm throwing here, because ultimately like mix and change in synthesis and stuff like that, to me that's secondary to composition and form within the composition, right? So it's important to plan that out in a way that feels like aesthetically pleasing, like in theory, like looking at it from afar, like, oh, this is a nice big symmetrical puzzle, big symmetrical shape to the piece, arc. I think that's important. I think that that's something that composers ought to consider regardless of genre affiliations. I'm really enjoying. This is not the first time we've heard some Italo disco influence from you. This is really bringing me giallo, which I am a big fan of. Which is, again, let's hear this through a 1980s set of saturation. Take me out of the box as far as the mix goes. I don't want to mistake this for digital recordings. You're right. I think the condensing is needed. That is great feedback. All the feedback is incredibly helpful, but I wanted to nail the structure, and it gets a bit of a tease. And it is a bit of a tease that gets long-winded. Let's hear what it sounds a bit condensed. I might be totally wrong on here, but I think that big picture here, form comes first, then we start to fill in the minutia of the arrangement and the instrumentation. Then when that's tracked, finally, we focus on this mix stuff. But ultimately, yeah, the mix has a lot to do with timbre, especially when we start making it sound like a VHS that was thrown in the river. That's what I want. I want that river VHS sound. Thank you, B. Thank you. All right. We got Breathplay back in the mix, and they write for us. This is an excerpt from a 20-minute DJ mix that I'm polishing for publication later this week. I did a high concept thing here where I assembled the mix in a multi-stage process using Ableton, Rekordbox, and reamped bounces for both on my Zoom recorder with sound from my apartment deliberately bleeding through. The result is a sort of inception effect with in uncanny overlapping layers of sonic reality and also shrouded or scuffed quality similar to Burial. Sold! Mix master feedback is welcome, but primarily I'd like input on presentation. I think there's two pitches of this mix to a potential Mixcloud listener. I could emphasize the technical intrigue of the experimental signal chain, which is a proven marketing strategy for dub techno, or I could focus on the way the field recording element makes it a literal home listening experience, a domestic version of techno that reflects my relationship to the genre. Oh yeah. We get in techno and we get in discourse. It's what we're here for. Girl Dinner version 3 excerpt. Let's go. You were correct. I am a fan. I am sold on this. It's totally my shit. You got one chord. We got a lot of room tone. We got dub techno. What else do you need? What else you need? We got field recordings, indoors and outdoors. We got an insane signal flow setup, which y'all can check out on the Discord. I'm not gonna change my view and open that up here on the stream. Y'all should definitely check out this signal flow to nerd out on how this was exactly recorded. But going to your question about like how to present this, not just audio wise, but in the verbiage, the writing that you use, in one direction of being technical. You can obviously, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest, of like, illuminating of how it was made, but then ultimately the big why you made it that way, and the big why relates to the field recording and the sort of emulation of the home listening experience by utilizing a literal reamp of recording it in your room from a distance and then playing it back as an auxiliary mix in the final version of the mix itself. That has story, that has lore, and ultimately you're trying to create a piece of deep listening as a DJ. Like this is very Pauline. This is very Maria Chavez, and it requires to some extent filling the listener in as to, what it is that we're hearing, where we are hearing it, and then why. And that the big why in this case is relation to, the domestic vision for techno that reflects your relationship to the genre, to quote you. That's worth expanding upon. You don't have to over-intellectualize here, but you don't have to under-intellectualize. I think that techno has varying degrees of people talking about it, and talking about their work. And honestly, it's some of the more written material and, the overlaps that we could see between lowercase noise, field recording, deep listening, and techno, and minimal and dub specifically, more traditional versions of techno. I think we could see a lot of overlap here that's worth expanding upon. But ultimately, like the emphasis of your pitch should be on the why. Why'd you do it that way? But within that context, you can expand a bit upon the experimental signal chain and ultimately how this was made. It is fascinating, because there are plenty of other people that might want to, that might have similar, or would be down with this sound world, but would go about it a different way. And to literally reamp, to literally in your room, like to hear what you're hearing, I think is very clever, but like we should know that like this is from not only the perspective of someone in the home listening environment, but the perspective of the artists themselves as they mix it. To some extent, it's obviously not just the reamped room recording and all of its noisy artifacts and imperfections of hearing it not through monitors in a room via just a Zoom H1, nothing fancy, but at the same time blending that quite nicely with the direct recording of the mix itself. It makes it goes beyond just a DJ mix by doing all that, that, right? Like you are creating a piece of tape music here, you are creating a piece of concrete that is highly attenuated to create spatiality. You're creating a sort of one person home acousmatic experience here, in which it's ultimately meant for speakers. This is music for speakers, right? But it's your speakers at your house, where you made it. It's very personalized, and it's also very vulnerable to kind of open up the thought process, especially in your relation to the genre, being that it's much more personal and introspective rather than about being a dancer who's letting loose on the floor every night. There are plenty of people, for obvious reasons, and there's not a wrong or a right reason to get into this stuff, but there's obviously people who feel it much more first and foremost as dancers through sound system. And there are many people who might argue that this type of music isn't complete until it's heard on a sound system, and you could definitely argue that with certain tracks. But I also think that like certain elements of tape music, some is meant for acousmatic in-person sound system experiences, and some are produced specifically for home listening stereo headphone mixes. So it's all contextual here, but I think that you bringing up the context is very important, and I think you will connect with the right type of listener by giving us the full spiel. Emphasis on deep listening, emphasis on where are we while we're hearing this, and to give us some of that in literal verbiage, I think is great. What you write here, truly beautiful composition. You are literally, you are literally hearing me, the person, all over it as well. Yes, walking around, knocking over some shit. You wrote, I was thinking a lot about that sound system thing because some of my selections in this mix are very much meant for sound systems, only like Sandwall District, and I'm defying it. Yeah, this is worth talking about as well, as talking about, this is the stuff you got to be dwelling on and reflecting on in words, and your relationship to the genre. You're not a purist, you're not a traditionalist when it comes, you're not a conservative techno fan. There are plenty of those out there. So you gotta justify your actions here. And it's just being a little, the only place outside of grad school that I see such, such discourse and articulations and essays and books about this is techno, is the club, is rave culture. There's so much to be dwelled upon in that. So you're not breaking any rules. So as long as you've got your, you're able to articulate, your choices, and to justify your choices, Now you can't convince everybody, but that ain't whatever. It is what it is, right? But it is ultimately, like I've said, for everybody, it's worth considering both contexts, the home listening, and then ultimately getting any of your projects out into the sound system context. But specifically in DJing, it's the type of thing that, subwoofers aren't meant to be heard necessarily, they're meant to be felt, and that type of stuff is a very physical space that you can't emulate at home. Certain music is meant for that context exclusively, and certain mixes are meant for that context exclusively. But I would consider the radio mix and the online stream mix a different context than that, but not to exclusively put yourself in one world versus the other, but to slowly if you're mostly in the home setting, to slowly venture out and to really battle test your work on a proper system, or any system, any PA, something that you don't have at home. Get loud. It's like practicing the drums. You can't just do it all quiet for the sake of your neighbors. At a certain point, you're going to have to rent a rehearsal space and really let it rip. This is why open decks are important places, because we don't all have CDJs, obviously, and we definitely don't all have fucking PA systems. Find your open decks, find them in your city. I might actually be organizing one in my area here at a local venue in Poughkeepsie. I think it's important, even for myself, who hasn't publicly DJ'd since Halloween 2022. Literally the last time I was on there. But boy, did this venue that we did it at, we could come during the day and practice. So that was such a beautiful thing. It wasn't an open decks in that sense, but it was like access. That's really fucking important. And there are places that provide that. So even if you don't fancy yourself a DJ in the larger scheme of things, it's worth going to. This is as close as many people get to listening clubs. This is deep listening in audio culture on display outside of the grad school electroacoustic and more experimental music world. Obviously, you could get pretty experimental in DJ world too, but outside of the suit and tie philosophers of music, the doctors in philosophy, the club is where deep listening and DJ culture is where deep listening can really manifest and actualize itself. But we gotta put ourselves out there in order to experience it. B wrote, just hit some open decks yesterday, and it was such a huge reminder of how nice actual sound systems are. Exactly. Exactly. Zach Lee. 3 words. There you go. Thank you, Breathplay. Another banger. I want to hear that whole mix. Send the whole mix for funsies once it's uploaded. All right, we got Reverend Pazu back in it again. Short sketch I cranked out the other night. Blah, 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 blah. It's a short one. We'll play it twice. For funsies, running man.
Hello. Yeah, this is Killian. Get me the Justice Department, Entertainment Division. No, hold that. Operator? Get me the President's agent.
Just cut it off right there. One more time.
Hello. Yeah, this is Killian. Get me the Justice Department, Entertainment Division. No, hold that. Operator? Get me the President's agent.
Oh man, it sounds like there's an ending in there. It sounds like we got cut off in the DAW without actually hearing something that it just surprises me that we would cut off so suddenly. It feels like there's something else there. Another pocket banger from Pazu here. Always love the sense of humor. Choice of sound drops in here, and then just going straight into the wonk, straight into this drunken kick drum, as Questlove called it, describing Jay Dilla's drum production style. The imperfectness that happens there is just fantastic. Curious about arrangement here of instrumentation, because we got drums, guitar, and bass, seemingly live instruments to some extent. Reminds me a lot of the MF Doom collaboration with, I believe his name is Clutchy. Fuck, I'm gonna have to look this shit up specifically. God damn, Clutchy Hopkins, I believe. MF Doom versus Clutchy Hopkins. It was like a a one-off collaborative, like basically freestyle record that MF Doom made at one point. Hold on, I have to find this shit. MF Doom meets Clutchy Hopkins. Yeah, that record, The Life of Clutchy Hopkins. Who is that? Is it even a real person? I don't fucking know. But the whole record is live instrumentation, produced, very raw, seemingly live band in overdubs, whether it's one person or an actual live band, I don't know. But like really truly bringing back the sort of gospel chops roots of a lot of this world of production, Stone's Throw Records and its children and its effects on the world, Now I want someone to spit over this, though. Where's the verse? Where's the verse, Pazu? I know you're a busy guy, but you got plenty of collaborators. We should get on that shit. And make it more than 45 seconds. That'll be good. Once again, we have a really nice intro and no ending. Intros are a dime a dozen, though. Endings, that's where the challenge is. Work on our endings. All my advice to everyone, don't forget about your endings, because they will come out of nowhere and now all of a sudden you are just ending a project very suddenly. Let's not do that. Let's be graceful. Let's find a way to arrange nicely here. Wonderful stuff. Wherever you are, Pazu, I want to hear a complete product. Send me a complete product. None of these excerpts. I know you're a busy guy. What are we saying in the chat to this? I just see this over a Guy Ritchie action sequence of some guy running across town doing odd jobs. Totally. It has the roots element to it. It has the obvious funk to it, that puts it in line almost with a, almost seemingly like funk recordings fully sampled and ripped and, chopped in production. That's why I want to know, origins of recording here. Are we playing all these parts? Are these samples? I'd be very curious about that. And in particular, the drums, not just the drums themselves, but the auxiliary percussion, the elements. We had some nice bell work going on that. Curious. Pazu's not here today, so he can't answer for us, but I hope to find out. But yeah, give us a full track. Okay. We got ourselves some from Shamyer. Our boy Shams is back. They wrote something and then crossed it out, but they have something else. New indie rock thing. A friend said it sounded like Ariel Pink and Cleaners from Venus. I'll leave it up to interpretation, but in essence, it's my experience mingling and socializing in your 20s. TBT. Rub it in my face, why don't ya? Mingling in your 30s can be fun too, but in your 20s, it just hits different, dog. Just hits different. Alien 4. Shamyer, let's go.
Intrinsically contrarian, so it's hard to find them. Our lives are fleeting in this race, but why is my
Shams with Alien 4 or just Alien. I'm not sure. Oh man. First of all, I know Shams actually knew Cola Boy, Matthew. R.I.P. to the GOAT. But I think you are a child of Cola Boy, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like he really seemed to put on the map this like West Coast 2020s disco world that I didn't know existed, because it's just so funky. But talk about orchestration. Like, this is not simple stripped down music. This has layers. This has various elements to it that require like really locking in both like traditional orchestration sort of brain, and then relaying that to like, I guess, traditional production, but traditional production in the like Quincy Jones kind of school of thought, where like you were thinking about acoustic instrumentation like first and foremost, and then like how that translates in the studio and how you can enhance it, and you enhance it quite well. So there's a really nice hybrid of instrumentation going on here that feels like really locked in from a production perspective, but like at its origins feels like both homage to that Cola Boy sound, but ultimately like you're in it, you know. I'd be really curious, Shams, to if you had any like, you know, if there are other, if this is this a scene, is this a world that Cola Boy started? Was he just one sort of world in that? Because I'd never heard anything of that like in the contemporary sense until I learned about him. Like in this, like specifically like LA, or at least like Cali new disco, like 2020s disco revival that we're hearing. And it obviously goes beyond just disco here. I also very much enjoy the almost new wave, almost like Brit 80s pop, almost dare I say Morrissey tone of voice that you have here as a expressive tenor. You know, crooning a bit, but very expressive, not kind of cloaking yourself in mystique or anything. You're putting yourself out there front and center. I would have loved more of the harmonies that you have stacked towards the end. I would love that, like a bit more call and response within the verses themselves earlier on, where like you say one line solo and then the next line kind of gets countered by the choir or something like that. You wrote, Matt was a contrarian in the Oxnard scene, heavy hardcore scene out there, but there was heavily a part of it, but he def was pulling from the past. Yeah, no, I remember seeing those clips of him playing Oxnard hardcore festivals and just doing this, you know, doing this new disco shit. And that is such a beautiful example of social cohesion outweighing genre affiliation. I talk about this shit all the fucking time. It's like mixed bills work when people are fucking cool with each other, you know, and that requires like making friends and talking to people. And clearly, you know, Matthew is so beloved as a person, and obviously musically as well, that it just makes sense that, you know, spiritually, that he would be on a hardcore show playing disco. You know what I mean? Yeah, he did play Sound and Fury, and I mean, that's the like shout out to La Raza, you know, like that's such a fucking Chicano festival, Sound and Fury specifically. It makes total sense that he would be in that world. And I guess this is just like, you know, maybe in his passing, you know, like Shams, you are inheriting something, being his homie, that like this scene can continue to spread out, even just like spiritual cousins of Cola Boy will continue to sprout. But this is fantastic, man. I've heard various sprinklings of your works over the years at this point, and you have a nice taste for, you know, a bit traditional takes in funk and disco and soul, and putting a you know, a locked in the production sort of tinge on it. Yeah, you wrote, my upbringing was Quincy Jones, Sade, disco, new age music, and Persian classical for my parents, and a lot of it comes into the music. Yeah, I could definitely hear that. I want to hear some more Persian classical in that. Is that the tar, the 3-string Persian lute instrument? Let's get some of that in there. Let's get some fucking modes going here. I don't even know what the Persian modes are. Let's get some beyond the 12 tones. Let's get some fucking microtones in there. Yeah, man, this is lovely stuff. And I mean, yeah, we need you've been toying with it. I want send links to the stuff that you got that's already out. But I would love to hear this in a collection of similar stuff. You wrote, I hope I could carry Matt's legacy on. I'll get there. Yo, absolutely, bro. You got my backing 100%. Put this shit out there. I will repost it. I'm a big fan of this stuff, but I feel it's very important. You know, Matthew's life was cut so short due to his physical health problems and things like that, and he was such a gem, a unique sort of thing, and it's even more refreshing to know that there wasn't really like this big scene of like Oxnard new disco occurring. It really was him. But the influence that he's had, continues to have, is so cool. It's really awesome. Yeah, let's make some halal disco. How about that, bro? That's the LA vibe, you know? What's more LA than that? Getting some funk in there and then also some Persian influence, right? Hell yeah. Good shit, Shams. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Yeah, man, that halal disco's for real. Speaking of halal disco, we got Karim back on it. Both another West Coast halal disco. Is wet music and halal disco going to have a collision at some point? That's the question. That is the real question here. Yo, sorry, I had to do it. Had to do it to him, Kareem. What'd you write for me? In the shed a lot right now and split between a few projects, music and otherwise, so sending a shed jam. Would love feedback on world building, working on soloing with cycles, but it's quite finicky, so there isn't a ton of it in this recording. All right. Shed jam sets you free. Improv for the day. Let's go. Another addition to the wet music catalog. We got a new one from Karim. This one goes directly in line with our monthly project themes, which we've discussed in relation to some of your previous works about like where it takes place, and to utilize whether it's literal waves in the ocean or modeled white noise to create this sort of whooshing sort of effect. It is bringing us outside, potentially aquatic, or let's say a whole lot of bodies of water of some sort that we're hearing here, and then giving us nothing but repetition within that framework. It feels once again very appropriate for video game score, but more than that, tapping a bit more into the Echo Jams earlier 10 Tricks Daniel Lopatin stuff. I know that Breathplay talking about R+7 here, like this is some of these are the intersections here of vaporwave and video game music and field recording, but also like choice of synthesis to create simple, more rudimentary tones and patterns, repetitive patterns, inherently minimal in form, and just the usage of repetition here. It brings us to a specific world that some people might relate to N64 or earlier level or earlier era video game scores, but that how much of that is tied in with some of the earliest sort of vaporwave aesthetics or proto vaporwave with 10 Tricks. It's there's a lot to be said about the strict repetition here. It doesn't extend beyond the loops here, and on the one hand we could say, okay, well, if we wanted to create a bit more of a beginning to end trajectory compositionally, we might want to create a bit more noticeable change here. But there's the other part of me that is thinking, intellectualizing this as a minimalist, in which like a minimalist who also loves video games and loves video game music, about how like this is ludo musicology. This is music for environments to interact with, and within those interactions, there's not a set time limit as to how long you'll be doing a particular task, and so sound needs to be repetitive to a formulaic extent in order to compensate for, depending on who's doing what, interacting with what, how long something will take. So the fact that there isn't really a form beyond repetition, we kind of fade in slowly, we have all of our elements, they repeat for a while, and then they, not as slowly as enter, but they, kind of gracefully fade out piece by piece until we're left with just, the final chords and some air, some field recordings here. But this could go on forever. And it would this would be the perfect opportunity for like an hour-long version for someone who really wants to exist in this world here. So I don't know. Part of me is thinking like from a conceptual piece of creating visual music or level music, things of that nature, like speculative ludo musicology, speculative film score here, that this fits right in, both as a minimalist aesthetic, but also like serving a functional purpose here. You wrote, noticing in the shed, I'm running into a default pattern where I do a stack approach to building and giving space. Need more dynamic forms and more interesting drums to make it less loopy. And I mean, like, I think patience is also important here. Like, this is a 4-minute excerpt here. But if you were to bring this to a more 6.5, 7 minutes, like, we could really take our time bringing in one element at a time. Even though it's a stack, it could, if we allow for more duration, we sort of get lulled by the repetition in individual pieces, and it doesn't feel like we're hearing it all at once necessarily. It might culminate in everything at once, but if you take it slowly, I feel like as listeners, we can, if things are happening long enough, we tend to disassociate and not think about it from this big picture and just sort of allow the elements to do their things one at a time. But that takes patience. That takes, I think, duration becomes important in that conversation here. And again, like as a minimalist, like nobody would stop you from making a 7-minute version of this, at least, that has a more spread out arrangement of the stack rather than happening all at once from the get-go. You wrote, like, I just end up doing no drums into drums, no drums. Making something less loopy would make it more into a real composition. I mean, it is a real composition here, but, like, I think you should plan that out before the jam. I mean, I know you're improvising here to some extent, but, like, you could create a framework in which, like, it could be a bit more complicated if you plan it that way. It doesn't need to. I think you're starting with just like drums off, intro into drums on, everything on, and then drums out, outro. Like that's a simple shape to it. But you could get a bit more in depth here. We could also create just B section. Like we could do something simple in chordal changes to just create a shift in which we've now moved to a slightly different zone. Or we've gone inside potentially from the outside, and then we might go back outside, or we might go submerge under the water and then re-emerge up top at the surface. Like these are things that you could really plan ahead and then execute. And I think that it'll get you out of your head a bit when you're following instructions that you create for yourself, rather than like feeling the need to like arrange on the fly. That's difficult for everybody, Yeah, there's one example, Shams. Every 8 bars, the beat changes. Yeah, that's one rule. There's ways to do that. Fuck it, every 13 bars. Sure. Make it an odd number. Set parameters for yourself that you have to follow and see how it goes. I think that would be really fun. Oh, fun little thing here. Also, bird chirps are a fun Easter egg. They are the Norns Messiaen script. So that is synthesized tones meant to emulate bird song, as once Olivier Messiaen, the composer, would emulate in his own orchestral notations. Norns fans, of course, they would find that in the Norns forums. They got fucking everything on Norns. Every time I ask in my stories, like, I'm looking for a piece of gear that could do something like this, and it's just something different every time. And there's always going to be one person who's like, Norns can do that. Have you considered Norns? Yes, I've considered Norns. I don't want to be fucking stuck on these forums doing this shit, man. I ain't got time. Nobody got time for that. A lot of people do have time for that, but I'm less interested in that. Some people really get that itch scratched, working on that open source music computer. I am Norns pilled, and I'm so sorry for it. Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. Good shit. Good shit sets you free from Karim. Another edition, another chapter in the story of wet music. It's an ongoing book. We write new parts to it every day. The legacy continues. Until next time. Good stuff, y'all. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. That's it for today. We will be meeting same time next week. And then the week after that, we have our monthly project presentation. Definitely do that. I'm looking at all y'all here. Y'all definitely are tapped in to the speculative film score angle and can give me some good stuff. So I'm holding you to it. I'm holding you to it. Good stuff from everyone. Hope everyone has a wonderful week. Remember to sign up for Field Recording Field Trip if you are in the area and are interested in such things. Wonderful stuff all around. Very much looking forward to hearing what you got next. I will see you next week. Shout outs once again to our friends at Tape Trade for sponsoring and showing us some love and giving us some infrastructure online. And for those of y'all that are interested, please sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/parrotski, where we will be meeting as usual this coming Sunday for our Sunday 3 p.m. edition, private stream edition of the Group Critique Fight Club. Every one of y'all supporting that, every little bit helps. You know, I'm a one-man music school, doing these private lessons, grinding them out multiple times a day, 5 days a week, and hosting 2 of these sessions every week, as well as our one-off workshops here and there and monthly projects. You know, shit's a grind, and it's only possible due to your support. And so I appreciate y'all when you can support. So sign up. Let me know if y'all want a free trial to join the Patreon. Really appreciate those of y'all able to help out when you can. And feel free to, if you want to just shoot me a Venmo, you know, always welcome a one-off contribution to the One Man Music School Fund at Max-Alper. You know where to find me. Be in touch. Hit your boy up. Holla at your boy. And I will see you next weekend. Have a good one, everybody. Take care. Deuces. Thank you for listening to another edition of Group Critique Fight Club with me, Max Alper, aka Parrotski. You can sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/Parrotski to get access to our Sunday Zoom school on top of the regular live public stream. Public stream takes place every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. All are welcome. And you are listening to the track Atop Alp Dog Mountain, Ja Plays Pokemon Go by me.